Hey, how you doing? Justin here. Today I want to share with you an interesting new tuning I've been experimenting a little bit with lately. It's kind of like a Nashville tuning or a high-strung tuning. I had a songwriting session with a pop songwriter, Kathy Dentist, who's an incredible writer. And whenever I go for a session with Kathy, I make sure I got some stuff in the bag before I get there. So we got a decent starting point to get going with. Now, I'd been playing like regular acoustic guitar and I was just like, oh, I've not really got anything that sounds kind of very different or interesting. So I thought, oh, let's have a go at Nashville. But I already had the guitar strung with fairly new strings. I didn't want to change all the strings and I couldn't find any of the 12-string sets. So what I thought I'd do is use the same thinnest 3 strings from the set on the thickest 3 strings. So basically I took the thinnest E string, the same one that would go on the thinnest string, and put it on the thickest string, where the thickest string would be. I took the B string, which is normally a B, and I put that on the D string and tuned it down to a D. And now Ziggy wants to come and say hello. Hello, Ziggy. And then I used the G string on the 5th string, tuned up to an A. So it's the same tuning, the same notes as standard tuning. E, B, G. It sounds the same. But then we've got D up an octave, A up an octave, and then the E is the same as the thinnest string. Now, that's the change. Usually on the thicker string, you would use a wound string and it would just be 1 octave higher than usual. But I'm really loving the fact that this string is the same as the thinner string. For example, when you play a D chord, you get that, what would normally be like a sus2 over on the top. Now, what I found was that actually playing the bass notes of the chord was kind of irrelevant. So you could play them, but you could also use a lot of those thicker strings as open strings where you wouldn't usually, because they'd sound all clashy. But in this tuning, the chord grips, the shapes that you play, can be exactly the same as regular chords because the tuning is the same. You can still play all your bar chords or whatever you want. But obviously the notes sound different. So everything that you play just sounds a little bit more interesting. So this kind of tuning would be like Nashville tuning traditionally was used as or commonly used as a doubling thing. So one guitar player would play in standard tuning and then you would track another guitar part exactly the same or pretty close using a Nashville strung, and it ends up sounding a little bit like a 12-string with some obvious advantages in that you can pan them hard left and right, like have them coming out different speakers. You could use different guitars. You could put different effects on one side and one on the other. But I must admit, I really like the sound of it just as a creative tool on its own. It made me think different. And again, particularly this having this string open at the top. The chords that I was using for that little thing there at the intro, which is the song that I ended up writing with Kathy, which I'm literally just started tracking, and I thought, hang on, I should do a video about this tuning before I forget about it. I started off with this kind of B minor 11, which is 7th fret, open, 7th fret, 7th fret, open, open. Just a lovely sound. And then I went for an E, an A. And again, because the thinnest string and the outside string, like I use this A all the time, but then I'm not making use of those 2 strings that are the same. So this is open, open, 7th, 6th, open, 7. And then I'm using an F sharp minor 11. And this is one I use very often, especially in the key of E. Normally I'd grab the bass note there with the thumb. But in this tuning, again, I want that thinner string ringing open. So it's open, 4, 4, 2, 0. Such an interesting sound. And then in that particular song, I went to an E. But you know, that's lovely, I think, as a chord progression. In the chorus, I went from a D. Now here again, this is it's an E chord. I'm thinking E, but I'm allowing the A to ring out and that high E there. Interesting. An A chord again, which you probably wouldn't leave that thickest E string ringing out. it would make it sound too E, too much like an E and not enough like an A. But because they're all high, the total sounds like an A again. So D, which by the way, if I didn't mention, is open, 6, 4, 5, 4. A, which is open, 7, 6, 5, 5. And then I jump to the E, just to highlight the melody really. The minor, straight minor chord sounds the same, but oh, how lush does having the minor 7 in there just really adds something special. Lovely D again, or this. It's a D minor, but it's not a regular D minor. It's got all of these other little notes that ring out. I'm finding it a really inspiring tuning. Even the open strings by themselves, if you play the G, A, B, it's just what a cool sound. Really interesting. It's just a vibey thing, especially I feel like when I'm writing, sometimes it's really important for me to kind of make sounds that I'm not used to making. I love using altered tunings and tunings where I don't really know what's going on. And this is a nice blend of that because the shapes are the same. So you don't have to worry about like learning whole new chord shapes and all of that sort of thing. You're just thinking, well, these are the shapes that I know already. They're common fingerings, but you can start to muck around with lifting fingers off, letting open strings ring out, trying out fancy chords or other things, or just experimenting and playing whatever you like. It's everything that you do with this tuning is going to sound really interesting. Nashville tuning is definitely something I'd recommend that you explore again, on your own. It's essentially exactly the same, just the E string would be a wound. You'd use probably a D string on the thickest string and then tune it up a tone from usual. I think that's the standard one. Over on my website, of course, if you're struggling with that, there is a lesson on Nashville tuning which outlines the common string gauges for that. I don't know if this tuning's has a name already. Probably does. Like I said, I doubt I'd be the first person to muck around with this. I'm sure lots of other people have go to Nashville and gone, well, I'll just use those strings again like that. I would definitely recommend you have a go at using this as a second guitar part, i.e. you're tracking. If you've played one guitar part on an acoustic guitar, grab another guitar with this sort of tuning and try and play exactly the same part at the same time. Invariably, you won't play it exactly the same, and those little differences make a really cool kind of a chorusing effect, especially with the changes of octaves of this or a Nashville tuned guitar. If you're a songwriter, just grab it as an interesting thing to have a bit of a go at. If you write a song with this interesting tuning, make sure you tag me on social media so I can go and check out your tune. I'd be very interested to see what you all come up with. Hope this was in some way interesting. Have yourself a fantastic day, and I'll see you for plenty more very soon. Bye-bye.